What's up, troops? This week in review, we've got the Uniparty funding themselves again. We've got the Minnesota riots expanding nationwide. We've got the FBI raiding the Fulton County warehouse for 2020 ballot fraud. And finally, we've got a whole nother batch of the Epstein file released today on the David Rutherford Show. Okay, everybody, this is going to be a doozy. If you're anything like me and Jordy, you're sending texts religiously back and forth going, did you see this? Did you see that? Did you see this? It's so much that a lot of people I know have just been like, fuck it. I'm not paying attention to this anymore. This is ridiculous. I can't keep up with the amount of craziness that's happening in world news and domestic news and the chaos of information that is just overwhelming our entire information apparatus now, up to including, and I didn't even cover this in the lead-in, but apparently on this new AI bot social media place called Matt Bach or some crazy, AI bots are now actively planning how to start their own economy, erase humans, and basically take over the world. That's going to be its own show here in the next few days, so I'm not even going to cover that, right, Jordy? I mean, did you see that?
Yeah, it's the Claude bot thing. Dude, I kind of want to make my own Claude bot though. You want to be subversive by creating your own bot farm to implement things that goes against the bot farms trying to organize? Dude, if you can't beat them, join them. Like this is happening. There's no stopping it. I'm like, I might as well become a master of robots. I think that's the play.
All right, then next steps. I'm in with you. Let's reach out to Elon and the Neuralink team and volunteer. Hey, we'll be the first, fully functional human beings to get the implants so we can combat the bots in the future. All right, cool. All right, now, all seriousness, let's talk about the beginning of last week. We had so much news. It was insane, man. We tried to keep up. We did 3 shows last week, just trying to keep up with all of this. It's really unbelievably powerful. And before we get into it, I just want to announce that the David Rutherford Show, we've got a great new core sponsor, and that's Black Rifle Coffee Company. One of the amazing things is that I've been friends with Evan Hafer since 2010 when I first met him on my first active operational trip at the CIA, and we've been very close friends ever since. And luckily he came and reached out to me in the summer and said, hey man, why aren't we doing this? We need to move forward. And I'm just so privileged and honored to be a part of this organization and to have them as a sponsor for both audio and video of our stuff, as well as me repping their coffee products and everything else on my own social media. So I just want to again thank Evan and Matt and JT and all the people over at BRCC. We are truly honored to have you as a core sponsor. All right, Uniparty, man. The Uniparty is one of those great mythological creatures, right? That seems to, lumber through the halls of Congress and the Senate every day, as they get on the microphone and they're like, down with the Republicans, down with the Democrats, let's string them up. They're anti-democracy. They're woke Marxists, right? That both sides. And then behind the halls of government, they're sitting there shaking hands. Yeah, I'll agree on your bill. Yeah, I'll agree on yours. And we saw that out in full force last week. A big portion of this whole thing was about this appropriations bill, refers to the HR 7148, the Consolidated Appropriations Act of 2026. And, this was approved by a vote of 341 to 88. And one of the things I want to just talk about within, this whole craziness are some of the components which Republicans voted for. Obviously, the main one, or not the main one, but some of the ones that stood out to me. There was in this appropriations bill, you had a bunch of Republicans, 75 that actually, Jordy's got their names listed up there. They voted for the continuation of gender policies, gender advocacy, DEI policies, and other Democratic initiatives. And it was really kind of unfathomable to me that it was so easy for these Republicans to vote for it. Now, why do they vote for it? Well, remember, these are appropriations bills, and there's a lot of these pork ideas that are funded in there. So if they don't vote on their buddies' stuff, then their stuff doesn't get funded themselves. But the problem is some of this stuff, like I said, it was gender advocacy, DEI. There were 57 Republicans that voted on an amendment to keep kill switches in cars. That was nuts. There was 20 Republican senators that John Solomon reported on this. There were 20 Republican senators that voted to continue funding the refugee stuff. Now, in the first Trump administration, this funding was $1.6 billion. And then over the 4 years with Biden, this jumped to $30 billion in funding. And it came under the guise of the Afghanistan pullout, right? Have all these refugees, but $30 billion. So when you look at the funding this is the funding that gives these people SNAP benefits. This is the funding that gives them ATM access and monthly stipends. This is the funding that gives them phones. This is the funding that helps them find temporary housing. Also permanent housing if they get in certain states to allow them to get home loans. This is all the different types of funding that we're seeing that and this doesn't even involve the scam funding that we've seen in Maine and Minnesota with some funding these refugees for healthcare or for child services, whatever. It's a completely separate pot of money, completely separate pot of $30 billion for these people. And that's, that's where you have to start to get the understanding of this grift that is taking place. Because if I'm a Republican and let's say I get, I don't know, $40 million into my district to help fund refugees or asylum seekers, that's still $30 million of funding that comes in. And what we've seen from a lot of great journalists, independent journalists out there is that the funding goes out to these people, and then the distribution then comes through these NGOs. And the NGOs are the people that take the funding and then give it to the other people. Well, what else do the NGOs do? Well, the NGOs take this money, they give it to a limited amount. We've seen this multiple times, just complete fraud and how much the end user actually gets. But then what do we also do? The NGOs then take that little pieces of that money and then fund what? The politicians that then voted for their funding that then funds their NGOs. And we see the way that worked. That's called money laundering, right? That's what we're looking at. All right. So you had a overwhelming mass of Republicans vote to support that funding alone to continuation of that funding, which I think raised it to almost $8 billion or a little over $8 billion for next year to continue. $8 billion. All right. All right. And these are the people that are coming in and exhausting your resources in the towns you live, and then also in the setup to flip these people to become full-time voters in the future. All right. Some of the people, the other one was, and this is the one that really caught my eye. This is the one that you should do the research on. And if you want to understand the magnitude of what's at stake here, this is the funding. There was basically, this was to fund the National Endowment for Democracy, the NED, right? And this this whole NED, if you're not familiar with this, there's a guy I follow who's brilliant because he's going in and he's reading the source documents of this. Okay. And I want to just play a real quick video by Mike Benz that kind of describes a brief history of NED and what it is, where it started with this guy, Carl Gersham, and what they do. All right. So go ahead, Jordy, play that.
And then he goes to work directly for the CIA for 12 years. From 1970 to 1982, he led clandestine media operations for the CIA and was awarded the CIA Intelligence Medal of Merit. This is the guy who came up with this brilliant, clever structuring of NED as an outside enterprise to be used as an outside NGO, to be paid for the government, but to be not formally the government, so it can do the dirty work the CIA wants to do, but doesn't want to get caught holding the bag of the dirty ops if the operation gets busted.
Awesome. All right. So that's just a brief history. And then Mike goes on for hours in these breakdowns of what the National Endowment for Democracy is, as well as USAID and all the other network of government-funded NGOs that had been conducting covert operations against media sources, covert operations against different governments. I mean, that's how this works, right? We fund these NGOs that have these great sounding titles. The National Endowment for Democracy is really going out and spreading how to break the duly elected governments or to create color revolutions in all of these places around the world. Now, some of the people, I just want to read off some of these names of Republicans who voted for this. These are also the Republicans that were on board and getting Trump's support when he says, we're going to stop this corruption. We're going to stop funding the organizations that are breaking down our own internal society, running the campaigns against the very initiatives of the Trump administration. All right. And here we go. Banks from Indiana, Barrasso, Wyoming, Blackburn, Tennessee, Bud, North Carolina, Corin, Texas, Tom Cotton, Arizona, Ernst, in Indiana, right? Lindsey Graham, of course, is in there for sure. Josh Hawley, which you wouldn't expect, is in there. Kennedy from Louisiana, McCormick, PA, Moody from Florida, Murkowski, Alaska, Schmidt from Missouri, Sheehy, Navy SEAL, voted for it. Tillis, Thune, Tuberville, all voted to continue funded the NED. Now, why is that? Why would they continue to do that, right? Here's a little clip that Mike Benz found from an interview back in the 90s on C-SPAN of this guy describing the link between the CIA and the NED. Go ahead and play that for us, Jordy.
My question is, what is the relationship or difference between the CIA and the National Endowment for Democracy?
When the National Endowment for Democracy was legislated into existence in 1983, congressional testimony and statements on the floor at that time was that this would allow the United States now to do overtly the sort of political intervention which the CIA had been doing covertly. And in fact, one can only say, democracy is a good thing, and National Endowment for Democracy is a good thing. One questions, though, whether, let us say, the United States would submit with good grace to a foreign nation's organizing an endowment to come into the United States and expend large sums of money in our electoral contests. As a matter of fact, it's prohibited by law here, but we do use this in other countries. The NED has been used in Panama, in the Philippines, in Nicaragua. There is a large plan for its operations now in Angola and the planned elections there. But I hesitate to say that the relationships are official or close.
All right. So that's back into the 90s, right? And all the countries he said, Iran Contra, that was a part, NAD was a part of that, the Philippines, right? And that's back then. When we also know that they played major roles in a lot of the Arab Spring in 2011-12. We saw participate in the Maidan Revolution in 2014. NAD was all over that type of sponsorship of other NGOs that were participating. And so what you have is this organization that was started the framework was built by a guy that had been in covert operations all through the 50s and 60s, then ran covert counter intelligence operations for media all over the world. And then in the 80s, after the church hearings, where it's basically shut down the agency and their far reach overseas in terms of covert operations, Reagan comes in, flips the switch back over, and they rebrand and come in with the NED, which gives essentially plausible deniability to the CIA for running their overt operations against anti-democracies around the world. And they just got better and better and better at doing that. And so the reason I bring this up is because within this, there are also these other affiliations that come about within these groups, right? And there's affiliations with NED and a lot of the AFL-CIO, and some of the organizations that support them and how it filters on. Now, remember, the NED is funded by the State Department, by USAID, by the CIA, and other places. So Mike Benz gives a little warning to Constantine Constant here a little bit. So play this little thing for us too, would you?
What's the one thing we're not talking about that we should be?
One of the main things that I think is likely to destabilize the U.S., rent-a-riot, pop-up protests that can completely destabilize a country when all the workers are walking out, they're blocking the highways, they're provoking the police. So you're left with either an authoritarian crackdown or police precinct burns to the ground, as what happened in Minneapolis. But a lot of this is intermediated by the unions, these groups like AFL-CIO and SEIU and whatnot. I think there's this very unexplored layer which needs to be renegotiated, which is U.S. financial assistance to unions and worker groups internationally, with that money boomeranging back home to spill into paid protests. I think that's something that the Justice Department, the Department of Labor, and the State Department need to seriously reevaluate.
All right. So when you get into the funding, and all these documents are there, I mean, you can go back in history and you can read how their funding works, where they fund it, for what types of things they fund for. And the reality is unions have always been used to seat revolutionary ideas, right? Just go back to the Industrial Revolution, the late 1890s, and then into the early 1900s, where a lot of the Marxist revolutions began, right? Where did they begin? They began in France, in England, in Germany, right? In Austria, in Vienna. All of these places, right, when these factories started going, they realized quickly, hey, if we can get in there and we can stop the progress of the American or international economies, then we can gain political power and political might, right? That's how it works. That's how these seed. So, when you look at these types of groups and who they're funding and why, then you back up and go, well, why would Republicans be funding these? Now you start to put the greater context of what the Uniparty intends on doing and why. And so these protests, right, when you think about what's going on the streets right now, and I'm going to pivot to this in terms of what's going on in Minnesota, as well as what we saw before with Black Lives Matter in 2020, all the way back down to the anti-Wall Street. What were those called again? Those
Occupy Wall Street.
Occupy Wall Street, right? These are very similar operations. These are not organic, whatever. These are structured paid organizations, right, that have funding and they have direct education and training. I did a lot of reporting last week on what was coming out in terms of the Signal group chats, the organization of Minnesota. We saw the playbooks, right, the revolutionary playbooks on how to do this, conduct these types of protests. Well, this is what I'm saying. There is a direct correlation to our own government funded operating NGOs or groups that then in terms takes that money and trains and funds activists all over the world, including activists that are now participating in the slow degradation of the American fabric and society. All right, let's play this one more. And this is, I think one of the last Mike Ben's videos I have. And the reason, again, I want to really emphasize why I highlight Mike Benz as much as I do, because he's doing the work. He's reading the documents. He's not making it up. He's not like so many people online are saying they see one little piece of something and then it becomes absolute truth. He is reading government documents. He's reading government program initiatives, playbook. I mean, he's digging into the actual materials that are available for all of you to go out and read. All right. That's why it's so valuable. All right. Let's play this one. And this is really interesting because this was from an organization called the U.S. Institute for Peace. And the person in this that he talks about is this Maria Stephan. And she is a hired paid employee by the U.S. Institute of Peace, right? And the U.S. Institute of Peace, which is another interesting, here you go. She's a political scientist and an expert on nonviolent resistance, civil resistance, and democracy promotion. Previously, she served as the director of the program for nonviolent action, the United States Institute for Peace, a position she founded and held around 2022, where she oversaw applied research, global training programs, and policy work supporting activists and social movements worldwide in advancing peace, democracy, and human rights, right? She also worked as a lead foreign affairs officer, where? In the U.S. State Department. All right, go ahead and play this one.
Here's Mike Benz discussing Stephan.
The U.S. Institute of Peace instructed its sponsored riot mobs to block roads, occupy government buildings, and deliberately seek to get arrested. This is Maria Stephan.
Third category of nonviolent tactics is nonviolent intervention. These include such actions as sit-ins, blocking roads, overloading facilities, establishing parallel or alternative institutions.
And we saw establishing parallel, or that means creating CHAZ or MAZ in Minnesota. We saw in her training guides, what she means by establishing like the parallel institutions is she means like establish parallel zones of control. It's literally the U.S. Institute of Peace, which is CIA, riot planning network.
Okay.
MED, USIP, CIA.
Okay. All right. So I know this is a lot. If you're listening, I know you're overwhelmed with the connections, but that's what all of this stuff is converging to get you to understand. It's all interconnected, and it's all about the funding, the behind the scenes funding of these organizations that keep a system in place to protect the people that are voting on the system, but also to protect the people who benefit. And that's what you have to understand. Who benefits, right? Who benefits from mass immigration? All right. In my mind, the most obvious are Democrats, right? If you can flood illegals into a particular area, especially purple states or swing states, and you can somehow get them to a point where there's no voter ID, i.e. the SAVE Act. There's no citizenship required as long as you have you don't even have to present IDs in some place, California, Minnesota, New York, but like you don't even have to present any form of ID to vote in our elections, right? So if you can flood in people, and you look at the voting rolls, which, by the way, they're not turning over. They're in court filing against the U.S. government, the DOJ, or the Elections Commission to gain access to voter rolls. They're doing that. Why? Because if they lose the access to this massive number of people, they lose the potential to control what is at stake, as well as in the future, they lose the potential to control the census, right? And what the census does, it converts to numbers of people that give then more electoral votes, which increase the value or place of these states. And when you look at California, they're losing massive numbers of voters. New York's losing massive numbers, Minnesota, Wisconsin, Michigan, all these people are leaving these states because they've turned into tax overreach. They've turned into the radicalization of their school systems and what's the overwhelming of budget deficits because of all these programs to help illegal immigration. So that's what's at stake. The other thing that's at stake is cheap labor. And that's why you have people like the Koch brothers and a lot of these other organizations that are really behind this type of cheap labor. And that's, I think that cross doesn't matter. I don't even think those people look at themselves as Republican or Democrats. They just want to make more money. And so when you start to implement, well, how do we protect this thing that we've done over the last 4 years, this influx of massive amounts of illegals? How do we protect that? Well, we do so by training people to create chaos that makes other people afraid and backs down from what needs to take place. And remember, the country voted to get rid of illegal immigrants. That's it. The country voted. Now there's some kind of whatever. But this is a nice pivot, right? Now, before I get into this, I just want to just give a shout out, obviously, to our new sponsor, Black Rifle Coffee Company, and just talk to you a little bit about what they do and how important they are, right? Here's the deal. Black Rifle Coffee didn't find patriotism in 2026. They were built on it. All of the guys behind this, man, served overseas valiantly, right? It was built by veterans, roasted in America and grounded in everything that America stands for. I know these men, they believe in what they say, right? I want you to think about starting the new year with coffee roasts like Tact a Squatch or Walking the Neighbors or the Spirit of 76. And these products, I'm telling you what, they're going to kickstart your day, right? So get out there and grab a new cold brew coffee can, right? Just in black or vanilla. Or if you want a real jolt, you can try the Grape X, which is 200 milligrams of caffeine, 0 sugar, insane grape flavor. These products will kick you in the ass to go crush your day, right? And you can find it at Walmart or your local Black Rifle coffee shop, or simply go over to blackrifle.com. Man, I'll tell you what, I am, again, so proud to be a member of the BRCC family. Hoo-yah. Okay. So we have the NED funding, all this stuff. We have all of this training that's available through these government paid organizations. And then what do we get? We get Minnesota. And the thing that I saw, and I did a lot of reporting on Minnesota as well too, but this week, what I really saw at the end of the week is we saw a bunch of school protests all over the country. Why don't you play that video, Jordan? Okay. When you watch that, I mean, it's pretty unbelievable to me that, and this is way I saw it in Atlanta. I saw it all over the place. I saw it California. I saw it everywhere. But what really is shocking to me, that a lot of these videos, there were videos of kids that were in grade school. And what I want you to think about is let's say you're the parent of a person that had your daughter murdered and raped by an illegal. And your younger child is going to local school where the teachers are advocating for these anti-ICE protests. So your youngest child is aware that their sibling was murdered or killed or raped or beaten by an illegal. And now they're sitting in class and their teacher is turning them into an activist to essentially support the person that just destroyed the lives of their sibling and their life, all their lives in the family. That's what's going on, right? I realize that, certain schools and certain districts believe that what they're doing is the right thing, but this is an abomination of the education system. But here's the deal. It's happening and nothing's going to stop it. The only thing that's going to stop it is you and whether or not you want your child to be able to participate in this. And I did see a couple of videos where a mom showed up and said, "What are you doing? This is ridiculous." But this is what's taking place. These people genuinely believe that our enforcement of federal law is somehow an attack on democracy or whatever they want to call it. And remember, these words they use are just trigger words to hit you emotionally. That's how this stuff works. Now, that's one end of the spectrum. That's where they're starting. That's where you indoctrinate for multiple generations. You go to the youngest possible level and you teach them that this type of activism is what America is about. But yet you don't ever talk about where the funding's coming from, what these people, how they were trained. Many of these people who are running these organizations are foreign actors, foreign entities that want to bring down the American system, and their NGOs are actually paid for in relation to the NED, USAID, and all that. So the color revolutions that they were paying for and sponsoring overseas, right, to spread democracy around the world, are now taking place on your shores and in our country. Here's the extreme level of what the protests become when you start to have your militant groups of the protests take place. Why don't you play this video?
We have breaking news at 11, and this video just in. Protesters setting a dumpster on fire right outside the downtown detention center where many federal immigration detainees are being held. Firefighters responded, but then backed away when they were confronted by a handful of protesters still in the street. It took about 20 minutes before law enforcement redeployed and chased those protesters away. By then, the fire had mostly burned itself out, and the fire trucks turned around and left the scene.
All right.
Let's take a live look.
So, this is nuts to me. There's multiple things. One, that these people are creating fires, putting up against detention centers in the hopes that the whole burning building. So that's an attack on a federal building, right? That's warfare. That's guerrilla warfare. And these people know what they're doing. They're trained to do it. That's guerrilla warfare taking place, right? The other aspect of it is the response of local municipal fire departments and trucks showing up and them being chased off, and then the local police not intervening in order to stop the fires of a federal. That's collusion. And what that is a referendum that these cities are supporting these attacks, all right? And that's treason. I don't care any way you look at it. That's what's taking place. And that's what this is all a bigger context for. Right? Because when you go back and you look at the protests that took place when Obama got rid of 10 million immigrants, Biden got rid of some immigrants, there were no protests during these periods. Only protests come in under Trump. And that's whether it's BLM and because he's a racist or now illegal immigration. It's not about the thing. It's about the groups that are coming in to dismantle this infrastructure that has been in development since when? When did the NED start? Early 1980s, right? And they've just gotten more substantial, more funding, more aggressive in terms of the other orchestrated covert operations or overt operations around the world, along with USAID and other NGOs, Open Society Foundation, right? This is what is happening. All right. So that's Minnesota. So you get Uniparty funding, you get chaos in the streets that's orchestrated by the funding, right? Then all of a sudden, now what do we have? We have the pushback from the Trump administration. And I'm talking about the FBI raids on the Fulton County warehouse that housed all of the ballot images and ballot boxes. Now, hopefully you watched my interview with Garland Favorito. He's an IT specialist who's been investigating 17 years of election fraud and problems within the voting machines and how it's done. But he really has been at the front line in Georgia, particularly against Fulton County and DeKalb County, leading the charge for the last 6 years in bringing cases. And it was actually his case that he brought that actually put a hold that they couldn't destroy those ballots in 2021 and January 26th of 2021. I highly recommend you go watch that interview with this guy. I played it on Friday. And what you have is you have now the FBI went down, took out 700 boxes of ballots, and then these tapes that register what took place in the voting machines. And so it's critical because then you know voting machine votes to ballots, and then also who voted, where they were from, how they were registered, all that is tied to that info. They seized all of that. Now, why don't you bring up the one ballot image that was posted recently? And this is a ballot image that shows the identical. This ballot image shows the identical ballot on one batch 11 and batch 35, and the write-in for John Ossoff and the circle. And so these are two separate ballots that were filed that have the exact same penmanship and the exact same market on filling in the circle. All right. So what does this mean? All right. And then the last little thing I want to talk about this is that Tulsi Gabbard was on this raid. Now, who's Tulsi Gabbard? She's the director of intelligence. That means she's in charge of the 18 different intelligence organizations out there that comprise our intelligence community, the IC. And she was on the ground. Now, why would she be there? Well, if you believe Ralph Pizzulo, Gary Bernstein, and Martin Rodil, then, or you believe David Clements, Sean Smith, Garland Favorito, you would begin to understand that this is a much greater problem going on. The big person, the video is just too long, but Patrick Byrne was in court this past week on a defamation case that he's in from the Dominion Voting Company. And he got to depose Eric Comer, who was at the time of 2020 was the, I think, CEO of Dominion, or high up at Dominion. And in his deposition, he said that, yes, he had communicated with people of foreign entities, foreigners who were participating in some capacity with the 2020 election and Dominion voting machines, up to including places in Serbia, Italy, and there was one other, I forgot what that is, overseas. Okay. So when you place all these ideas together, what you now have is you have an international conspiracy as well as a conspiracy that took place, according to Garland Favorito, and he alleges this, hasn't come out in a court case, but it will now, hopefully, that not only was there an international conspiracy, but there was also a Georgia state conspiracy and a county conspiracy that involved Rathesberger, the Secretary of State, Governor Kemp, Fannie Willis, who brought a RICO charge against Trump for trying to find 12,000 votes, where we know that at least there could be 300,000+ votes that are in contention from the 70 counties in Georgia. So again, a spider web of conspiracies that are now beginning to gain profound traction, right? And Trump has been posting constantly on Truth Social about all these 2020 election things. Now, what does this mean for us? Now, what happens if the FBI goes in, looks at the ballots, and determines they're all fraudulent? In particular, the 16,000 that Giuliani first found when he first went down investigating, and there are affidavits for that had no creases, no nothing. All the markings were the same on all of them, and it was some ungodly amount for Biden versus Trump. It was the statistical irregularities were impossible to take place, right? All right, what happens if that case is brought and they are found to be fraudulent ballots? Well, basically, that erases the 2020 election results for Georgia, which then flips the election to Trump, right? And then everything that's downstream from that becomes a case in and of itself, right? Which also gets rid of Ossoff and Warnock, the senators who were appointed during that time, right? And then also potentially validates all of the other states that have existing cases, because then there'll be merit for the FBI going in and looking at Arizona ballots, looking at Pennsylvania ballots, Michigan ballots, Wisconsin ballots, Nevada ballots. Well, then we'll open cases to all those. So then now all of a sudden your singular Fulton County issue becomes a nationwide conspiracy, right? So now you have the international conspiracy of Dominion, Smartmatic, the Venezuelan cartels, if you believe what Martin Rodil and Gary Bernstein said. Then you have the domestic issue, which if you talk to Sean Smith and all of the secretaries of state who did not file against election groups or commissions that broke criminal statutes and codes in every one of these states, right? And then you had the people that covered it all up on top of that, right? So that's going on. The funding for the organizations that are actively over the past 30, 40 years have seeded all kinds of counterintelligence operations to foreign governments that now are being funded in America, right? These you have chaos in the streets with the Minnesota anti-ICE riots, right? And now you've got the FBI raid in Georgia. So start to put all that together. And we get to the last of the whole thing, which is the doozy part of it. Jordy's smiling as we talk about this a lot. All right. We, on Friday, in direct compliance or non-compliance, however you look at it, with the bill that was almost unanimously passed by the House by Democrats and Republicans, with the exception of Clay Higgins, from Louisiana, the absolute release of every single Epstein file that exists within the federal government. Okay, so what were some of the things we had? And Mario Afal is one of the best guys out there covering these, but it today was just ridiculous out there that I saw. And so allegedly there are descriptions in here that include satanic ritual abuse and torture of young boys, girls, and women all over the world in relation to this, that that allegedly implicate famous people. There are communications in there that don't directly correlate to that type of illegality, but there are curious exchanges. Some person went in there and saw that there are 900 references to pizza, which some people are claiming that the Pizzagate thing was absolutely 100% true. And if you don't know, pizza is a euphemism for young boys, for predators and pedophiles. There's different insignias and terms that are used in these, and that was released in the wiki files in the FBI on how they identify this. And some of these communications involve the NBA commissioner, Silver, Reid Hoffman, who owned LinkedIn, very chummy. There were some other people that had great relationships. There's one about George Bush Sr. and satanic ritual abuse. Obviously, Bill Gates contracting STDs from Russian hookers and asking Epstein, hey, how do I get a cure and give it to my wife without her knowing? There's even accusations by certain people, informants, and these informants, I should mention, have records themselves about Donald Trump and his affiliation with Epstein. All kinds of accusations are emerging. The one that really kind of popped out for me, and Jordan, if you could bring that up, there was a really fascinating one that links a SEAL Team 6 founder, plank owner, the head of it, Dick Marcinko, to being arrested in Mexico for being a part of a major sex trafficking ring with kids. And there was even a little piece in there that talks about the now sitting president who understood what this all meant, because it has involved an ambassador involved in it, American officials involved in it, and then Dick Marcinko involved. And that blew my mind, right? Just unbelievably, like, what the hell is going on? Okay, now as I take a step back, obviously, from all this, there's several things that kind of hit me in a fascinating way. One, we have all these, and using the term conspiracy theories or theories that have been proven correct in many different ways. And if you really want to go down a deep, dark hole on human trafficking and the prevalence of it, what I recommend is there is a podcast out there called the Martyr Made podcast by a guy named Daryl Cooper. And he does a massive deep dive on Epstein and human trafficking. And if you just type in, on Spotify or Apple or whatever, Martyr Made Epstein show, it's a multi-show. I think it's 3 shows. Each show's like 4.5 hours long. And Cooper goes into a deep, dark history of international governments, blackmails, intelligence groups hiding and covering these illegal trafficking blackmail rings that have been in existence for forever. As long as there have been people seeking power, this has been a part. As long as there have been these different types of cults, you go all the way back down to the ancient Canaanites and human sacrificing, the worship of Baal and Maal and all these crazy things that still people believe are happening today. There's no denying this exists. And there's enough witness testimony from it. Now, what interests me so much about this whole thing is, right, Epstein's history and the Epstein files. There are also these massive emails with very powerful people talking about the Vatican and relationships there. In one email, he speaks as if he represents the Rothschilds, right? And another one, he talks about human cloning or human DNA programs out his ranch and all over in New Mexico. So, it's not just talking about human trafficking for blackmail prominent people. There's a whole nother aspect of Epstein that you have to understand. And so what I want to pull up a video is another Mike Vence, because he does another huge deep dive on Epstein as well too. And he talks briefly about the fusion of where Epstein started. And Epstein really started when he was brought into Bear Stearns, right? A global banking mega giant that, collapsed in 2008, as a fixer, a person that makes introductions or launders money. And so this little clip we got from Mike Vence digs into the stuff that he found in all his research. So go ahead, Jordy.
In the early 1980s, literally all 4 parts. And who, by the way, was the head of Israeli military intelligence on the Israeli side of this? Ehud Barak, who Jeffrey Epstein would meet with 45 times, do business deals together in Mongolia, Cote d'Ivoire, the United States, Israel, Russia. You have all 4 intelligence, not just random, the top people involved in Iran-Contra from all 4 of the intelligence agencies, from all 4 of the main countries associated with the action, living with Jeffrey Epstein, doing multiple fucking multi-week sleepovers together in fucking London, living together as fucking cuddle buddies in a hotel in New York City.
All right.
While Bear Stearns was running brokerage accounts at the CIA proprietary bank.
All right. So he goes on and on and on. It's the best streaming that's out there that breaks all this stuff down. And so as you begin to back out of this and you realize this individual was not just, some sleazebag, pedophile, but he was orchestrating all different types. He was at the cross section of intelligence agencies all across the world, brokering deals, laundering money, all for high profile people, because that's what you do, right? What you don't have somebody working directly in the CIA or working directly at State Department or working directly. What you do is you go through NGOs, and they have other people, sub NGOs, that then work with these types of fixers to make this happen. What I find fascinating is that when they dump these files, they dump them on us in this like chaotic dump. Here, figure it out on your own. And they do it on a Friday afternoon while the FBI is all doing all this, while there's all this other stuff going on. Maybe we're distracted. We're not going to pay attention, and they want us to believe it's just a hoax. But what I say is, why don't they give it to us in the actual files that they have, right? Why are we not getting a CIA file on this, an FBA file on this? Why are we not getting a banking file for flagged business transaction file within the SEC or very distinct groups? Because all these files are not made willy-nilly. They're all contextualized in other files. Why don't they release us in that capacity? That's something to think about. They only give you these singular emails, which seem to just send off more or create more confusion. And then now, I'm sure by today, whatever organizations that are freaking out about these dumps have then created their bot farms to flood with fake emails or things that are flooding in there as well too, on all different people. And that's how this whole counter intelligence information warfare works. All right. So you had the way they're distributing it. But the one thing that really caught my mind, and I'm going to play you, this is a deputy attorney general who was under question. I want you to listen to how he responds to this reporter's question. All right, Jordy, go ahead and play this.
You said this is the end of the Epstein, of your review of the Epstein files. So just to clarify, is the public going to learn the identities of the men who abused the girls with the information that you're releasing? And if not, why not? And then I have a quick follow-up.
I mean, you just baked in an assumption into your question that I have never said and I don't know to be true. Is the public going to learn about men that abuse these girls? Like, what does that mean? I mean, I don't understand what that means.
Well, I mean, they're the men who abused the young women through Epstein's.
Look, we said in July, and it remains as true today as it was in July. If we had information, we meaning the Department of Justice, about men who abused women, we would prosecute them, right? We talked about the work that we're doing. That's why I said that. I said this earlier. There's this built-in assumption that somehow there's this hidden tranche of information of men that we know about that we're covering up or that we're choosing not to prosecute. That is not the case. I don't know whether.
All right. I can't listen to that jackass anymore. All right. The reality is what haven't we gotten? Right? What haven't we gotten? And the number one thing that we haven't gotten, right, or multiple things, and this is what we need to see. What we need to see is all files, right? And these are profiles, all right, based on Epstein and all of his relationships to foreign intelligence, and then anything related to his actions with the CIA, right? That's what we need to see. Those files, those write-ups. That's the first one. FBI files on him, right? Or that's not even just foreign intelligence, him and CIA foreign. And then we need to see all the FBI files. We need to see all the FBI files of the research, the people all of the police officers from Palm Beach County they interviewed, police officers from New York, people from New Mexico. We need to see all the interviews of the people who worked for him. We need to see those interviews in context. These are FBI statements from people, right? We need to see all of his banking files. We need to see all of the investigation that the FBI, Homeland, local law enforcement, Palm Beach County sheriffs, New York City police officers. We need to see all of the banking research that we saw. We know that when there was the deputy AG down in the island where, his little rape island was going to do an investigation, and then she got relieved of her duty. Right after it, when Biden went down there for some visit and some boondoggle, right? We know that happened. So where are all the banking files? Where are all the electronic transfers and banking transfers that took place that were flagged from the SEC, flagged from the banking group, flagged from the SIFT regulators? Where's all that information? And then the number one, by far, is, I don't want to forget all of the files in the investigation leading to that he committed suicide. Dan Bongino said he read them, he saw them. Well, let's see those files. Let's see what you read and saw, because it's a part of what needs to be redacted. There's no active investigation going on that. So show us those. And then the final ones, hands down, we need to see the FD 302s. All right. These are the files that the FBI conducted. These are the interviews with the victims, right? And who the victims name as the people who raped, abused, and trafficked them. Because what this guy's saying is, all right, we've shown you. And you also got to remember, there's a video back in the day of Mike Johnson, the head of the House Republican, right? We're in control of him saying what he can and can't release. Any active investigations, any national intelligence things, any of this. And then they said they wouldn't release any images or videos of people being sexually abused, violent videos, killed, they said we're not going to release. So there's that whole thing that's probably out there that Pam Bondi said we have tens of thousands of hours of videos and images, right? But they're not going to release that, which would then indicate there'd be people in the videos. And if you notice, there's only the videos of Prince, whatever his name is, and he's in there and some of these other, but it's none of the hardcore stuff that would indict who's ever in the pictures with these people, right? And there's tens of thousands of hours of this stuff. We know that. But it's the 302s. It's the interviews of the victims, right? And what they wrote. Because you could black out their names, descriptions, everything, but they will name names of people that molested and raped them. So whatever this guy's saying is he's lying his face off to us. And then what kills me is, what does this all mean overall? All right. In my mind, what I'm seeing and what I'm understanding from all of this stuff, from, the Uniparty voting to the Minnesota protests and who's funding it, the Georgia raids and the cover up with 2020, and then the Epstein files. What I see is that there is an active, organized effort being run by probably a whole group of very powerful people that don't want to get exposed because of how integrated and interwoven this system of corruption is. And that's what we're seeing right now. But I don't think the American people are going to give this up, right? This was all part of what Trump and the Trump team ran on, was to expose corruption, was at the highest level. And that's what Doge started doing. That's what we've seen, all this other stuff. So we're seeing it take place in real time. Now, what you got to imagine is those people that are involved in under this, they're starting to sweat it because the noose is starting to get tight, right? More and more and more information is starting to come out, whether it's through whistleblowers or whatever it is. The challenge that I think the American people that want to end corruption are dealing with is that those that are in power are firmly entrenched in protecting it. And until that happens, the rift, the division, the color revolution that's taking place in America right now is going to continue to intensify, because what they want to do is they want us to fight each other. All right? Because if we fight each other, we're not focused on exposing what they've been doing to us, which is to raid the coffers, put us into debt, destabilize our position around the world, and to make us hate our neighbors. All right, everybody. I know that was a truckload of information, but again, what I'm trying to do in this mountain of tsunami is to give it some context so that you can come to the realization that these little pieces of information, these threads that are taking place, that's the flashbang of truth that's going off in your face. Like you're intuitively seeing things and you're like, what the F is going on? And that intuitive response, they're going to try and make you believe you're crazy. It's not true. And then more importantly, they're just simply not going to answer the questions that are being presented to them. And I'll tell you what, that is not a good recipe for stability moving forward in our great country. What do you think, Jordy?
That was a lot, dude. That was intense. It's just, I don't think it just confirms what everyone's suspected a little bit too. You've had all these feelings, and I feel like it's like we had a sketch of all of this information, and we're starting to get our markers out, and we're coloring in the different parts of it, and we're just slowly coloring in this picture.
Yeah, I agree with you. And that's what it is you have all these pieces of information, and I know we have to be delicate in making presumptions that of the connections, but when you get enough pieces, right, that you have, deductive reasoning starts to override the gaslighting, the false information, the disinformation campaigns, the propaganda, then it becomes too profound to deny. And then all it takes is one whistleblower here, one survivor there that begins to connect these things. And the way we're going to be able to do that is if we gain access to another treasure trove of leaked information. We need another Assange moment. We need another Snowden moment in order to have those documents that we prove that these conspiracies are real, they're active, and they're going to continue to take place unless we, the people, join together and say no more.
Yeah, I was wondering if there's going to be like an Edward Snowden moment or a WikiLeaks moment that kind of just pops this whole bubble.
Well, MTG is out there calling for their, them to be pardoned and bring back in and let them testify under oath what they actually found and who they got it and what they know. But again, remember, this whole thing is deep, has so many layers of protection in it. And there's no way they're going to vote themselves out. And there's no way the people that are running these people are going to allow them to vote themselves out. So you get some red-blooded American in there who exposes this whole thing. So
Man.
Yeah, man. All right. We want to thank everybody for following. Please like, share, follow, leave a comment. That drives us up in the algorithm. We're just so honored to be able to be on the air and talk to you about this stuff. I hope you are enjoying it. If you know of any great stories we're missing or that relate to what we've been talking about, please don't hesitate. Send them in to the website, davidrutherford.com. We'd be happy to investigate and put some of this on. If you know somebody who's participated or about any of this stuff who you think would be a good interview, please send us the same thing. Reach out to us. Or go visit the site just to get some swag or maybe check out the online motivational courses we offer, whatever it may be. So thank you so much. We also thank our families and we thank God for the grace of our ability to do this. All right, everybody. Hoo-yah.